Welcome to the 360 Teaching and Learning Podcast. I'm Adrian Pumphrey, and in this episode we catch up with Park Tudor's upper school tech integrator Sandi Johnson. We discuss the advent of artificial intelligence, including Chat GPT, and how it is sending shockwaves through the world of education. Enjoy the episode. Well, Sandi, thanks for joining us again. It's been a while since you've been on the show.
Yeah, happy to be back.
Yeah, thank you. A lot's happened since you were last on the show, including the invention of Chat GPT. Mm-hmm. And this is something that a lot of our colleagues have been talking about in the hallways and the faculty workrooms, and there's a lot of buzz about this right now. Both excitement and dread, I think, in equal measure in terms of its effects on education. So let's start. I wonder, for those listening and wondering what ChatGPT is, I wondered if you could give a short summary of what it looks like.
Yeah, so this is a product that's been developed by OpenAI, a company that has actually been working with this tool for some time. It was released in November, and it's a tool that's based a language tool that's based on a platform of data that's collected primarily from the web, and it is a tool that learns as it goes. So the more input we give it, the smarter it gets. And just some stats behind it. They claimed to have 1 million followers within 5 days of release in November.
That's incredible.
No other company has done anything like that. I've heard a stat about Netflix taking 1.5 years to get to that point. So it was extremely popular right off the bat, so much so that if you go to try to use it today, you often get a message that says we are at capacity, high level of use, come back later, try again. I've talked to educators here who came to a presentation I did on the topic, and they cannot even get registered with an account because every time they come, they're turned away. So luckily I created an account early on and can play with it, and have had the same feelings that I think teachers are feeling, instant dread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I consider myself somebody who likes to play and tinker with technology, so curiosity took over really quickly for me. And as we looked at the tool and saw what it could do, the power of speed that it was enabled to produce products that students would typically take weeks, days, months in a classroom developing, it can be produced in seconds. We really, as educators, had to wrap our heads around, where do we go from here? How does our teaching look when a lot of the things we may have been doing can be replaced with this tool?
Yeah.
So it's a tool where you put in a prompt on any language-based topic, and it will spit out an answer for you in a very conversational like tone, whereas you might do a Google search on a Google platform and it sends you various links to explore or images or things like that. This one talks back to you, so it's again very conversational, and you can tweak the conversation as you go, ask it for more information. It continues to give you more information. And again, it's evolving every single day. I think teachers have found that what once a month ago was very bot produced, it sounded like it had a formula to spit out a very common paragraph, has even evolved past that. It can now detect tone or style and weave that into responses and sound more human-like every single day. So
yeah, it's pretty crazy what it can do. I was also fortunate enough to create an account ahead of the curve a little bit. So I've had a chance to play with it as well, and it's pretty amazing what this can do.
Yeah.
It can write essays, it can create apps from any code you care to mention. It can plan itineraries for trips. It can write letters for you. There's an incredible array of things that it can do.
Yeah, and I think Post-COVID, there was a lot of talk in classrooms about teacher fatigue and just feeling like there was so much on their plates that their jobs were stressful enough that they were considering jumping ship. And I think with the invention of this tool and the access to it and hopefully the openness to using it, some of the things that may have pushed teachers to the edge of exhaustion can be taken off their plates with this tool. And if we look at the fact that it can write letters to our parents and write a lesson plan or help us develop our professional goals, these are things that would take us hours or days after school, after we've been working with kids one-on-one, that some of these things can really benefit teachers and take items off their plate so that they can have more time to spend with the children when they're in the classroom and feel that they have the balance of family time at home, which everyone wants in any industry. So that excites me. And I think that, the bigger issue of how do we look at the student usage of the tool is where we really need to focus our efforts. I think.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a minute, because I've heard it said that we've got nothing to worry about because we've had calculators. We had the advent of calculators, and then we had the advent of things that might solve math problems for you, and we've also had people that would write essays for you in the past. And so I've heard the argument that this is nothing new. The rebuttal to that argument is that this creates things from scratch, from nothing. So that takes that and it makes it so much easier. So that's a big difference to, for example, calculators, the advent of calculators.
Yeah.
So let's just hit that head on for a minute. I'm coming from the viewpoint of, I'm thinking of my colleagues who are English teachers or history, social studies teachers. They previously set essays, go away and write this paper on the Civil War, for example. And a kid can go away and, as dishonest as it may be, they can use this platform to write their essay. It avoids plagiarism detection. So how do we address that as educators? How do we plan around that and prepare for that?
Yeah, I think that is the question of the moment. And if we go back to the use of the calculator and obviously the idea that we have a very powerful tool in the hands of our student mathematicians that have been used for a very long time, they still would not propose to use the tool in a classroom where we're learning the fundamentals of mathematics. You're not going to test a student on their multiplication skills and say, take out your calculator, what's 3 times 5? We teach the concept of multiplication through images and practicing in multiple modalities. And it isn't until students grasp the fundamentals of mathematics that we put the tool in their hand to take away some of the easier steps so that we can think deeper about the bigger steps. And now relating that to an English classroom, the fact that the machine can write the essay instantly, and looking at that related to the use of a calculator, we don't want the students to remove the fundamentals of writing in their instruction time, which is essentially what this tool would do, right? We're going to write it for you, sentence structure. We can certainly go back and analyze it and learn a flipped classroom where we're looking at the end product and analyzing it and pulling it apart to understand a paragraph or an essay and look at maybe the flaws with that product to get a deeper understanding of writing in general. But we still need students to be able to form sentences on their own, the basics of writing, grammar, punctuation, that all has to be done so we can even identify that there's an error in a more advanced piece of writing. So we do need to be cautious about whose hands this tool falls into. It was interesting, I asked in the group we met with the other day, what age of student do you think would be using this tool? And I was sitting in a room of educators that were probably from 2nd, 3rd grade all the way on up through 12th grade. And somebody said, oh, a 4th grader would love this. And one of the high school teachers was like, what? really? And then somebody said, I think even a third grader would use this. And I'm like, yes, they would. If you were given an essay on write a paragraph about ancient Egypt, and a kiddo knew he could just tell the machine to write it, he'd use it. And how would he be exposed to that? And once older siblings are using that, the message goes down to the lower grades and then spreads amongst friends. And, it's something we can't keep out of the hands of our youth. And we need to, I think, be an open book about what the tool is, that we know it exists. I already have students walking in my office seeing it over my shoulder as I was planning a presentation for other teachers. Oh, you're using Chat GPT. What are you using it for? They're aware. I think they need to know we're aware, and that we are also aware of the tools they can use to test that it is an AI-produced product. There are products out there that you can copy and paste an essay into, and it will say it's 99% created by AI, or 89% created by a human. So we can detect that, but we also have to be aware there are ways students are already figuring out how to take their essays and put it into a rephrasing AI tool, and now it's not detectable by AI detectors.
Sure.
Or kids have even found out you can run it through a second language, and when you bring it back into the English language, it is now not detectable by an AI detector. So as fast as they're inventing the tool to help themselves, they're inventing the counter tool to identify the product. So, if kids know we know about those things, they're less likely to attempt to use it in an important situation. We talked about taking writing samples, paper pencil format, as a starting point at the beginning of your year, so you can really identify what your students' writing styles are on day one. And then a mid-year sample and an end-of-year sample to really make sure that they are growing as writers without fear of whatever they may have produced with the tools that are accessible to them. I think you could say the same for mathematics. You take a beginning of year, mid-year, end-of-year assessment with or without a calculator to determine if they can work through the problems you want them to be able to solve. So I think those are things we're just going to have to be focused on moving forward. The idea that we know our students' writing style, and if they tried to use this tool, we would certainly be able to identify that this is different than what they've ever produced before is gone, because this tool just showed up on our radar in November of this past year. And although this year we know our students' writing ability from the first half of the school year, next year, if they're using this tool on day one of school, we don't know their writing ability. We think their writing sounds amazing on day one because they're using the tool on day one.
Right.
So we have to be able to take a true sample, and kids know their way around technology enough to squeak it in when they want to squeak it in.
Yeah.
So.
And it's worth saying out loud that kids and people in general have had the ability to be academically dishonest for forever. Exactly. And so it's worth saying that a lot of kids do have the integrity to just to be honest with their work, and really we are in a way talking about a subset of the student population anywhere, not necessarily just here. Part of the conversation, if I could switch gears slightly, part of the conversation so far has kind of assumed a static environment. So if all else being equal, if everything stays the same, how are we going to adapt to Chat GPT? Let's go broader now and just think about the nature of education itself. This is hard to predict, but how do you think this might change the face of education in terms of how we do school?
That's the question of the hour, I think. Between COVID and sending everybody home and teachers having to learn how to deliver content and collect content through a machine, and then the invention of Chat GPT, since mid-COVID, we've said education is now going to change. There will be students who prefer to learn at home from here on out because they were so successful at home versus sitting in a classroom. We can say the same about this tool. There are students who will continue to try to use this tool and free up their mind for creativity, which I think is kind of one of the ways we're going to have to look at education. If we can take out the basics, that allows us to now look at writing in a much more creative way. I think that's kind of where we have to start. And I have posted the question of how can we use Chat GPT for good in some Facebook educator groups that I've been part of, and they have come up with amazing examples of what we can do in a classroom. And I've been on social media sites, and I'm now following teachers that are showing what they're doing every day in their classroom with the tool. We do have to understand that this tool is not for use for children under 18. So obviously children under 18 are going to be exploring and using it, but we legally cannot open up the computers and say everybody produce something with Chat GPT in the classroom. So right there we're at a impasse as far as how creative can we get. We can't put the tool in the kids' hands legally in a classroom.
Okay.
So what are the teachers going to use it for? And an example of something that I used it for just to play with was I created a poem. I was watching a TV show. And it was on, the show was about two famous home builders, brothers who compete against each other. And I happened to be watching it on TV while I was messing around with ChatGPT. And I said, write me a poem about Drew and Jonathan, two home construction workers who have a TV show. And it spit me out 4 stanzas of a poem about these two characters that I didn't really give much information about. And then I said, rewrite it as a tragedy, and rewrite it as a limerick, and rewrite it as a haiku. And it instantly spit out 5 different versions of the poem. Really funny, like incredible. And
Amazing.
Then the tragedy was one of the brothers dies, and it was like, based on an accident they had on a site. And it was really interesting. And I thought I could print these out and bring them into a classroom and ask them, how did the language change in the poetry to make it a tragedy or to make it a limerick? What is the structure change that we see happening? This is a limerick. And I think that it made me something relevant, current today, right? I didn't have to go look up Shakespeare poetry. I looked something fun that kids would know about today. And I was able to produce all the products I needed for that lesson within minutes, like under 5 minutes. I had 5 poems that I could really compare and contrast. And I think it's, again, that kind of flipped idea of looking at products that might be end produced and going back and assessing how they are put together. And so in education in general, we can look at it that way. And any type of product where we can make a machine produce, let's tear it apart and break it down. So that's one overarching theme that could be applied to any classroom and the use of this particular tool. But it's changing every day. And again, I follow some educators online that show me what they're doing every day, and they're my inspiration right now. And then I get on and play a little, and I watch a little more on social media. And my professional development is social media right now because it's blowing up with ideas.
Yeah.
Also, kind of going back to the tool itself, I do just want to point out that this is one of many AI tools. Microsoft invested $10 billion into this tool in the attempt. I think the end goal is to integrate it into their Microsoft Office suite. You'll be able to pull up a Word document and from a drop-down menu have it produce a letter of recommendation or a cover sheet for a job application or a whatever it is you want it to complete in seconds that can be tweaked and adjusted to your needs. So you see, they believe in this technology enough to invest $10 billion into it. Google has been told to drop everything and focus on AI. I just saw an article last night about Google pushing in a lot of money to make their Google searches have an AI component within it. So it's much more advanced and a competitor with Microsoft. These companies that have already changed the world see this as the next big thing to invest all their money into to continue to change the world and stay on top of their market. So this is a big industry changing tool that will affect many companies. I'm also looking at it, how people are using it outside of education, and it's astronomically impactful. It is huge.
No, a couple of things I've seen in just the past week was one was this artist, this songwriter who is well known, asked another AI program to write a song about a particular topic in the style of him.
Yes.
And it wrote this incredible song, and it was all from scratch, all just created in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think it took an hour to render or something, but that's only going to get shorter and shorter. Yeah. And it's just mind blowing. And then the other day, the image AI program DALL-E.
Yeah.
I have access to that too, and I was able to ask it to create an impressionist painting of my dog, so of my dog's breed, and it was absolutely incredible what it came up with.
Yeah.
So this is just the beginning. I mean, it's only going to grow exponentially. More out there.
I think it will change the world to be a more creative world. I think. You don't have to be an artist to make art anymore. You don't have to be a musician to make music anymore. If you can find the way to ask the tools in the correct format for the product you want and learn to ask the most efficient questions, you are as powerful of a creator as anybody. I think that's something we can help our children in the classroom do too. What do you want it to produce for you? Mm-hmm. Look at the first iteration of it. How do you ask it to produce a better iteration? And you mentioned the idea of having a product written in somebody's personal style. And this is what I have found really fascinating just in the last week or two, is that, the idea that the products that are being put out sound so scripted or identifiable as AI written because they're cookie cutter or repetitive in nature. Mm-hmm. I think that people are discovering that if you put in samples of your own writing and ask it to identify the style or the tone or all sorts of characteristics of writing, it will identify the style and tone and all the characteristics, and you can save that identifiable comment and attach it to anything you produce from here on out and have it sound like you. Mm-hmm. And every time you teach your computer to do that, it's getting smarter and understanding more. Data input is critical to this tool. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just incredible. And I think helping students learn to identify what's wrong with this piece. It sounds cookie cutter. It sounds repetitive in nature. I see that vocabulary word 4 times in the piece. How do you get rid of that? And what do you ask it to do to be a better piece? Help students think deeper and just more analytical about what they're looking at. So I think they'll grow much more in ways we can't even predict at this point in time because of this tool. And hopefully it'll open up to use in the classroom as far as the students are concerned. There's a lot to worry about there too, just like social media. It produces a lot of content that could be questionable. Yeah. Or right now, just getting a warning out there to educators. It has just caveats on there that anything that you're inputting into the system is being saved and can be given over to authorities. Mm-hmm. And so, anything you're asking is open to, it's part of your digital footprint, just like anything else is. And so just be aware of that, and our students need to be aware of that. Mm-hmm. And the more we attempt to hide the product from students, the worse that could be. You can imagine. But it's a very exciting tool. I love the art applications too. There's actually one tome and a few other ones that write PowerPoint presentations, and if you give it a topic, it produces a 5-page PowerPoint presentation with nothing more than a topic, and you can just mix it and rephrase it or add to it, ask it to add more slides. It writes your presentation for you. We have to be aware of that as educators. If you give your topic to a kid and say, write a presentation on this, a machine can do it instantly, and it looks great. So, again, doing more of the project work in the classroom would be helpful. Think about what you're sending home for students to do. If it can be done with AI and you ask them to all go home and do it, you're probably going to get products back that are are computer generated.
So this will probably change the nature of what homework looks like.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And for the teachers who haven't even explored this yet, they need to be aware. They need to know that, your students have access to this technology, and what are we asking for them to do? The kids will be glad to know they've got 2 minutes of homework because they can finish it in 2 minutes. But the teachers need to know that that's what's happening, and what can they do that's more meaningful on their end when the students go home, if they want them to spend time at home reviewing or revising or practicing. On the teacher flip side of things, the tool can create tests for you. You ask it to create study guides for you. You ask it to write different types of questions for students to explore or research. Again, taking things off of their plate that would typically fill hours, of their time after school as they prep for the next day or the next week. So powerful things happening here. I think I'm excited about it. I'm totally geeked out about the whole thing. I'm constantly researching and watching what's happening on a day-to-day basis. It is changing day to day.
But I think one thing is clear, this is happening. It's, whether we sort of get on board with it or not, it's something that is inevitable and happening, and it's probably pretty important for us as educators to keep talking about it and keep that conversation going, to be on the boat rather than left on the shore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is worth our time to stop and explore at this early moment in time when some of us know about it and some of us don't, until we're all on the same page, and then schools can wrap their head around how they want to handle the tool. This is not a tool you can block. That's, again, a lot of people's quick knee-jerk reaction to this. Students can turn off Wi-Fi networks. Students can use VPNs to get access to these tools, and we want it to be equitable. We don't want students who have access to technology to have this tool, and students who are in a lower socioeconomic group to not have access. Right now it's a free tool, but we all know that's going away. It's a matter of when and how much is it going to cost.
Right.
And and equity is important right now as we talk about the advantages that this tool can offer people. So
absolutely. Well, Sandi, lots to think about, but thank you for joining us today. No doubt this is just the very beginning of this conversation, but we appreciate your forward thinking on this, and we look forward to talking more.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
The 360 Teaching and Learning podcast is produced by Park Tudor School. To listen to previous episodes of the 360 Teaching and Learning podcast, head to 360podcast.org or subscribe by searching for 360 Teaching and Learning wherever you get your podcasts.